All right, guys, welcome to tonight's disruption chat. Normally we do this just on Twitter, but given that it's coming towards the end of the summer in terms of our quote unquote off months, I know everybody's still kind of up in the air about what they're going to do and things of that nature. I wanted to put together something, and when Coach Taylor approached me about this, I thought it was a great idea. So we're going to have. We found some wonderful guys who took time out to kind of be a round table for us. We've got some submitted questions. We will have the opportunity, if time presents itself, to answer questions. So in just a minute, I'm going to open the chat. As we introduce these guys, they're going to put their best form of contact in the chat. And then what I'll do is after they're done, I'll draw a line. We'll start with the questions, and then we'll just myself and Coach Taylor will go from there. These guys saw the already submitted questions, but they do not know who's going to be asked which questions yet. So, what the answer that you get is directly off the dome, and just trying to coach and learn as best we can. So. For those of you guys who don't know who I am, my name is Peter Noonan. I'm the defensive tackles coach at Pflugerville Hendrickson. I run Disruption Chat and the Hanging with Coach Noonan podcast. I've gotten to know several of these guys through various clinics and interactions, and Coach Taylor and I through learning how to podcast so that I can one day be as great as he is.
Well, I guess that's my cue. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. And first of all, full disclosure here, okay? So, well, you know how high tech this podcast is. First of all, my name's Coach Ty Taylor. I'm the defensive line coach at Texarkana Pleasant Grove High School, and I host the Keep Your Pads Down podcast. And just to show you, Coach Noonan, I'm currently in a closet that when we moved into this new house, I grabbed a hold of it before my wife could. And so this is my space, okay? This is like my one space in the whole house that's mine. And it's not claimed by my kids or my wife. And I can scratch and fart and do everything I want to do in this little, 3x5 space here. And so I don't know how high tech it is, but this is where the sausage is made right here. So, but anyway, glad to have you guys here, and it's nice to have some faces to put with the Twitter handles that I see on these on the Disruption Chat on Tuesday night, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm going to introduce the two guys that I was in charge of wrangling. And then Coach Taylor will introduce his guys, and then we'll start off with the questions. So I first reached out to Coach Trey Bryant. He is the defensive line coach at McKinney High School. He's a former DFW Texas high school football player. He played at Richardson-Berkner. He also played at Baylor, had a little bit of time in the pros and the Arena League, and now he's going on his 9th year. Smart young mind. So Coach Taylor Coach Bryant, thank you for taking the time to help us out and get better.
I appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure to be here amongst you guys, and anytime I get a chance to talk ball, especially D-line, I'm always down for it. So I'm excited for tonight, and like I can say, just any questions you have, ask. I was telling Peter earlier, man, I'm not one of those guys that's going to shy away and not try to tell you what I do. My biggest thing is I have a quote I live by, and it said, if I had the keys to success, why wouldn't I make copies for everybody? So whatever you need and whatever you want to know about D-line, if I can help, I'm here, and I'm going to tell you everything I know about it. I'm also here to learn if you guys got something else that I can learn from. I'm in my 9th year coaching it, but like I said, I'm still learning every week, any chance I get. So appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm telling you right now, I'm stealing that quote. So I'll give you credit for it, though. But I like that. And another guy I reached out to was Coach Brent Milby. He is the DC at Paris North Lamar, also assistant head coach. formerly at Omaha Paul Pewitt, and he's going into his 9th year coaching. Coach Milby and I are we're 1 degree of separation away because we have a mutual coaching friend who we went to college with, who also ties me to Coach Bryant as well. But Coach Milby, thank you for taking the time out, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, truly honored to be invited to do this. And it's funny too because I've actually coached with Coach Taylor too as well. So we were actually at that time I was actually on the offensive side of the ball. We went head to head a lot. So again, excited to be here. Hopefully I can give you some of you guys that small school perspective and help out with questions like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and introduce my guys. We got one coach that's still logging in. He got stuck in DFW traffic, which is just another reminder why you don't ever need to live in DFW. No offense to you guys who are there right now, but anyway, yeah. I'll start with Coach Martin. Coach Martin is came on our podcast. What was it, a couple months ago, Coach Martin?
Yeah, it's been a couple of months.
And he and I, we have, our history goes way back. He was a coach in Huntsville, which is where I grew up, Huntsville, Texas, when I was coming through, and he actually left right before I got into high school, but almost went to work for him there at Huntsville, and have since kept in touch with him and just really admire him and respect him for the man that he is and the coach that he is. And he is currently the defensive coordinator at Mart. And if you don't know anything about Mart, they have coaches at 3 in a row.
3 in a row, yeah.
3 in a row, state championships on the 2A level, and he just has a really great way of communicating and getting his kids to play for him, and so really excited to have you on, Coach Martin. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Hey guys, I'm just going to tell you, I'm the lucky one tonight, and I'm probably going to be the oldest guy on this thing. But I'm telling you, you young minds, I'm here to listen. And it's going to be a great night of this. If there's ever anything I can do, when I put it out there, my Twitter or my email or whatever, please contact me. I love to do this, and I'm the one that's blessed. And thank you and Coach Noonan for asking me to be here. I'm excited.
All right, and so next up we got Coach Clark coming in. And Coach Clark, I was just talking about how you got stuck in traffic, but you made it. You found a way. Didn't no problem being a little bit late, but we're glad you're here. Coach Clark is currently a defensive line coach at Aledo High School, which is another big time powerhouse in the state of Texas. They just wrapped up another season this year where they won. Coach, was this the 4 out of 5 you've won 5A Division II state championships? Is that right?
3 out of 4.
3 out of 4. I'm sorry. My bad. 3 out of 4.
That's all right.
So 3 out of 4 state championships. Coach Clark has also came on the podcast a few months ago and does a really great job of just talking about the technical side of defensive line play. And obviously the success that those guys have had speaks for itself. So Coach Clark, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey man, I appreciate you having me. It's always good to get around other good minds and learn a lot of ball.
All right, last up, we got Coach OG, Coach Mike OGuin, looking fly in his Notre Dame gear right now. But, hey, don't get it twisted. The dude is a Texas high school football coach at heart. He's the son of a coach, played his high school football in Texas. He's an SMU grad, and 2 years ago was helping Galena Park North Shore win that unbelievable state championship over Duncanville, where the kid goes up and grabs the pass in the corner of the end zone. Coach, what was that kid's name?
AJ Corder.
There you go. Anyway, just if you guys watch that game, remember that game. I remember watching that. That was probably one of the most memorable moments in all of state championship history there for the state of Texas. But now Coach OGuin left Galena Park North Shore and was spent last season as a graduate assistant at Texas Tech, and is now an assistant defensive line coach up there at Notre Dame. And so they're in the middle of starting their camp and everything, but he was good enough to take some time out of that and come talk with us tonight. So Coach OGuin, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank y'all guys for having me. Man, it's feel good to be around some Texas guys, man. Up here in Indiana, I'm way up here. I'm one deep up here Texas wise. So man, it's good to be around some minds, man. I'm here to learn. I got my notes ready, and I'm excited. Appreciate you guys for having me.
Awesome. Coach Clark, if you will, just put your best form of contact in the chat for everybody, and then from there we will start with the questions. Coach Taylor's going to ask the odd questions. We had 10 previously submitted questions, and then I will ask the even ones. We will randomly choose which 3 coaches will answer. And then, like I said, if there is time, we'll take from the chat, and we'll just kind of go from there. So, without further ado, Coach Taylor,
All right,
man,
I got question number 1.
Far away.
All right, and also, Coach Noonan mentioned this in our email, but just coaches, if hey, I'm the one that's the most guilty of everybody, but if you can keep your answers to just a couple minutes, so we got to get a chance for everybody to respond. And then if there's something that guys want to follow up with, or they want to ask you to maybe elaborate on something, then y'all can do that maybe after this is over. But just so everybody gets a chance to answer. But this first question was submitted by Coach Brent Batchelor. His Twitter handle is @batch026, and he said, "What are your coaching points on your wrong arm or spill technique? Teams scout us and they log it outside." And at first, when I read this question, I thought of Coach OG, because on our episode we talk about Coach, we talked about your splatter technique. So I'm going to go ahead and let you right off the bat answer this one, and then we'll toss it over a couple other coaches on the panel. But Coach OGuin, what you got about on that one? How are you guys coaching, or how have you coached your wrong arm spill technique?
Okay, yep. So recently, we've got away from doing the wrong arm or the wrong shoulder, like we talked about on your podcast. We do what we call a splatter technique, where we want to take our hands and we want to be heavy and thick through the inside half of that puller, whoever it may be. So we want to get heavy and thick through the inside half and press vertically through the inside half of that man, so we can knock him back and try to knock off the secondary puller if there is one. And also so we can make contact so that the guy can't bypass us and log us and wash us down inside. So that's the biggest thing we do. We want to take and we want to be more physical with the block instead of turning and having our wrong shoulder and being a little weaker. We want to be more firm and aggressive with our hands so that we can deliberately make contact so we can prevent that guy from bubbling us and logging us down. So that's something that we use on our spill technique, what we call it splatter.
So, and I just real quick follow-up question, Coach. So when you're and you might have said this as I was writing some notes down, but when you're punching that guy's inside shoulder, are you driving him vertically to knock off that second puller?
Yes, we're knocking him vertically up the field. Once we make contact on his inside half, we want to press vertical. That's correct.
And I'm assuming the thought process behind that is so you're not giving up 1-for-1, so you're buying that guy back so now he can, pop out and make the play.
Mm-hmm.
If he can do that, but instead of just sacrificing 1-for-1.
Yeah, our thought process is to keep ourselves alive. So if the ball hasn't already hit outside of us, that we can make a play, and so we're not just giving ourselves up. Because sometimes when you're wrong shoulder, you can miss, and like you said, the question about log, they can bubble you and you can block yourself. So we just want to keep ourselves alive and not get that 1-for-1 and give ourselves what we feel is the best chance to continue to make a play.
Great. Coach Clark, I'll throw that question over to you and let you answer that. I know you guys are even front, and you probably have some great stuff for that. So how are you guys teaching spill or wrong arm technique? How are you guys coaching up taking on pullers?
We're gonna probably be a little more traditional with it to start off with, especially if we're in our 4-1 box. We will. I call it rip, spin, sit, which is it's just your good old fashioned traditional wrong shoulder, wrong arm, inside shoulder. And we're going to try to take that first one out. We see a lot of times guys will try to get on different levels when they pull as well, and it can get a little dicey. We haven't run into the log a whole lot, but when we do, if they do get a little depth on us, we'll try to get our guys, especially our ends. Now, I don't do it with the tackles inside. If we're going to see a trap that's going to pass, we're going to rip, spin, sit, and try to get back through there, which, trap always gets muddy anyways. If you play it good, and it should. But with the ends, if we're going to see some depth in the puller, like they are going to take that angle to log us, I would say we probably play it a lot like Coach just talked about. It kind of adjusting to probably that splatter to where, no, you're not going to get to my inside. I'm going to get a little depth with you as you get depth. So we're going to kind of try to mirror that pool, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
And then get into, similar to what Coach just said, get into them and try to work them upfield so I can take that next one out. End all be all, I think, in a scheme-wise, if we do get logged in our 4-1 box, in our mind is, well, if I get logged, I took one puller out. If the other one gets around me, I should have a Mike backer fitting inside of that one and an outside backer fitting outside of that. So technically we should still be gap sound, even if we do technically get logged. But we would like to see the end take that guy vertically into that backside puller as well.
And I'm sure, you know, if they're getting logged, that probably means they're too far upfield, right? They're not surfing down the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If they can get in there, get up there, it's a bad situation if they're upfield, no matter how you play.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Coach Bryant, how are you guys coaching that up over there at McKinney?
We actually kind of do it the same. We kind of do some of both. We don't do the splatter, but my thing is we do a see feel. So I'm seeing that most of the time it's usually my 5 or my 4. We're high up front, so we got to get hands on that tackle. First off, whether I'm in a 4 or 5, I'm getting my eyes inside. So if I'm a 5 technique and that guy releases inside, I got to make sure I get hands off of him. Because the first thing I'm telling my guys is our job is to keep them guys off our guys behind us. I don't care how many tackles we got up front, but we need to make sure those guys behind us have 100 tackles. So biggest thing we trying to do is knock that guy off his path first off, and I got hands on that guy and I got eyes down inside. If I see that puller, I'm going to meet that puller, and we are wrong-arming it, but we are getting vertical. So we teach our guys wrong arm, get vertical, and still – what we see a lot of guys is they'll do that influence trap on us. So, you know, they doing like play action off of it, anything like that. So more than like what we doing is – but we have a time – we actually was playing Plano East, and my DN made a good play where he got vertical and then got back flat and made the play. But right now, it's kind of like the splatter, so we're not taking both hands, but we kind of doing what Coach Parkman doing as well. So when we running down that line of scrimmage trying to close that gap as well, though, we wrong arm it, get back vertical.
So y'all are, when you do get down block, you're collisioning the tackle, and then you're turning your shoulders and running down the line of scrimmage. Is that correct?
Yes,
and then with
sir.
Wrong arm, you're taking your upfield shoulder.
Upfield shoulder, and I'm spilling them, but I'm not giving myself up. So I'm spilling that thing, and then I'm getting back vertical.
I got you.
Just try to still get back into play.
Yeah. Okay. Great. What I like about all 3 of those answers is you have some kind of some terms there that can really give something concrete to your kids to think about. Like Coach OGuin, you said, it's a splatter, which when you think of splatter, you think of something, being like, and you say you were going to be thick and heavy on that guy's inside shoulder. That's exactly what I think of when I think of splatter, and then Coach Clark, you guys got rip, spin, sit, and then we're going to see, feel, and eyes inside with Coach Bryant. And I think when you can have those little coaching cues that those kids remember, like, hey, when you get a down block here, what are you thinking? Well, I'm gonna eyes inside, and I'm gonna see, feel, whatever. And I think when you can do that, that's gonna really help those kids kind of remember what they're doing and help them be successful. Great stuff, Coach. Coaches, let's go to question 2, Coach Noonan.
All right, question 2 is submitted by Coach Brian Dreyer. His Twitter is @FBCoachDreyer. He asks, what are your teaching progressions for taking on double teams? I think I've seen a lot of stuff come around Twitter lately about this concept and stuff. So I'm gonna toss this one to Coach Martin first.
Coach, here's the kind of the thing that we teach here. I'm from a small school. My one defensive end will probably be our quarterback next year, as well as my defensive end. But what we teach our kids here, and what I do as being the D-line coach and the defensive coordinator, is we're gonna dissect that block first, and we're gonna decide whether it's a vertical double team or it's a horizontal double team. We're gonna try to decide whether he's trying to knock us off the ball or whether we're trying to zone concept and they're trying to feed up and chip up to our backers. So what we do is we try to go through the blocks the same way. We're going to try to decide what block we're getting as a double team. And the biggest thing that we're going to teach as a double team is we're going to get skinny, and we're going to try to defeat the block. If we can't defeat it, we're not going to lose ground. We're going to go to the ground. So we kind of dissect it in two different ways, whether it's vertical double team or horizontal double team. And by doing that, you know, we're going to get off and we're going to read. And the biggest thing that we teach is we read with our hands. You know, we're going to feel where that block is. Who's the guy that's trying to overtake us? Who's the guy? And we're going to make our linebacker right. And that's the biggest thing we do with double teams. We work double teams, you know, pretty much every day, and we do it with pads, you know, because we can't pound on each other. We're not as fortunate as some guys. We got 22 guys on the field is our biggest number we've had in the last 3 years. And so that's how we teach a double team block. We're going to defeat it. We're going to just see what block we're getting. We're going to get skinny, and we're going to try to defeat the block.
Awesome. Coach, you might have 22 guys, but those are 22 fierce dudes on the field, man. Don't let anybody, you know, don't worry about the numbers. They're going to play like many.
You gotta love the quarterback / DN combo. That dude's gotta be a dog.
Hey, he was the cover boy this year. He weighed the other day when he came up, and he's up to 225 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Tech and everybody else. He's a beast. He has already played. He's played 16 ball games every year since he was a freshman. So he's a beast. And a great.
Awesome. Awesome. Coach Milby, how are you guys taking on double teams?
Well, I'll tell you this: we do practice it a lot. We're a 3-man front. We run a 3-4 scheme. So, you know, I tell my guys down in front of us that if they are not getting a double team, they're probably getting fired pretty quick. But first and foremost, I mean, the thing that we probably preach the most is ball get off. You know, we got to make sure that we are firing off the ball. We're not going to give any ground. You know, yeah, we're punching the read, but at the same time, we're not going to just sit there and be stagnant. You know, we're getting our hips behind us, we're running our feet, and we're staying there. You know, much like Coach Martin, you know, to me, there's not a secret formula to beat a double team. It's just, you know, being tougher than that guy or those two guys and just having the will to get through it, get skinny, and, you know, worst case scenario, make a pile and keep those guys off the linebackers that are making plays. But most important, you know, that ball get off and getting your hips behind you, making sure you have a good base and you're getting that extension with your hands.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. You want to beat a double team, you got to get off the ball fast anyway. To me, that's the simplest answer. You know, sometimes it's the simplest is the most complex in a sense, but I'm with you on that, and you got to practice it every day. Coach OGuin, you know, what's the Fighting Irish way of doing double teams, man?
First and foremost, like Coach Milby said, you know, getting off the ball is going to be number one. If you can get those guys on different levels, it's hard for those guys to double team you. So number one thing we teach is knock back, you know, attacking vertically through the via that guy's neck. Okay, so once you get you do a good get off, you get your hands on him, you get knocked back, you create a new line of scrimmage. Okay, once you feel that outside pressure, okay, you want to take the guy that you're on, you want to throw him away from the pressure. Okay, and once you throw him away from the pressure, up here, coach teaches reduce your surface area. So once you feel that contact, you throw away, you reduce your surface area, and then once you feel the backside guy climb, you expand through the gap with a power base and be ready to make a play if that guy does come off. If the guy does not come off your back, then you're going to anchor down and hold those two guys up. So the way Coach Elson teaches up here at Notre Dame it's called anchor, reduce, and expand. That's how he teaches a double team.
I got to write all that down right now because that's really – I like the simplicity of that. And it's just like what you were saying, Coach Taylor, about the first stuff with the wrong arm. Those are very concrete concepts, you know, in key terms. Anchor, reduce. What was the last one?
Expand.
Yeah. And then what I like too is, you know, we talk about from a pass rush standpoint, right? We want to rush half a man, and we don't want to give them too much of us. So reducing that surface area, when you talk about taking on a double team, you keep talking about reducing surface area is only going to help carry into the other stuff.
And I don't know. Well, when I coached high school ball, the biggest thing I used to have to coach my guys up on the double team was, they would try to take on both the blockers. Have two hands here, try to fight both. One phrase I used to say is, "A house divided can't stand." You got both your hands divided, man, you're gonna get put on your back. So you want to have your hands on the man you're lined up on and take care of that. That was the biggest issue I had, was having guys they want to fight both the fight 600 pounds. I'm like, man, 600 pounds moving one direction ain't finna stop all of a sudden. You better just worry about half of it and whoop that guy. That was the biggest issue I had, coaching from when I was a freshman coach at John Tyler all the way up, was guys want to be Superman and fight both the blockers on the double team. Once you get them to realize you defeat the post man or the man you're lined up on, it made it a lot easier.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Coach Taylor, you want to do question 3?
Yeah, Coach OGuin getting biblical on them boys. House divided stuff. I like it. All right, question number 3. Okay. Now this one's submitted by Coach Gilbert Garcia. His Twitter handle is @CoachGar3IA. So it kind of looks like Garcia, but he throws a little 3 in there in the middle. I see what you did there, Coach. But Coach @CoachGar3IA. Anyway, this is a question about middle school defensive line. Okay. And really, I think you could expand this out to when you're talking about freshmen or just young defensive linemen. Okay. The most important fundamental drills and concepts for middle school defensive line are, Coach Clark, I'll throw that question to you to let you start off with that one. Just when you're getting, if you were talking to a middle school coach, he asked you, hey, what are the most important skills that I need to teach these middle school kids, these 7th and 8th grade kids, what would they be?
I think the first thing, obviously, is when you're dealing with middle schools, you got to create drills and create a practice schedule that incorporates a lot of individuals, because there's a lot of those middle school rascals running around, and if they ain't doing something, they're doing something wrong probably, So I try to create a system of things that I want them to know, but you got to be careful and create it in a situation where they can use it in a lot of numbers and a lot of kids and not a lot of coaches. So that would be the first thing in any middle school position, probably I would say, is the ticket. But as far as what I want them to know by the time they get to me, I guess is probably more geared towards the question, would be most certainly stance. What we're looking for in a stance as a program, and it should be uniform across. Definitely 2 interior guys should be very similar. The 2 ends could be a little different if they are. We'll probably save that for the varsity level, but a stance, a right-handed and a left-handed stance, that's huge. And that's something you can do with 40 kids if you needed to. Second thing is the idea behind inside-outside head-up technique. Here in Aledo, we don't play a whole lot of head-up techniques. Other places I've been in the past, we have. And so if they get to me and I say, hey, get in an inside technique, it doesn't matter if they're a 4, it doesn't matter if they're a 1-eye, it doesn't matter where they are 6. If they have the idea of what an inside technique is and how we play it, that's huge. We can get them into the technique or the lineup on the guy. They can have a clue as to how to play that. And then the same for an outside technique. So when you're an inside technique, you're doing this. You have this hand down. You have your man hand down, things like that, inside, outside, head-up techniques. If they can come to me with those 2 things, I think from that we can progress into a lot more. And that's going to be better for them at the middle school level. I mean, we can't teach a lot of the stuff at the middle school level that we do. It's just it can't be done with that many kids, that few of coaches, that many teams. And so if they can get lined up and they have a clue as to what they're doing when they're lined up, they're going to be better for themselves down there at that level too. And then also coming up to our level, it'll be a lot better as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I think a lot of you guys, I see y'all because y'all be posting stuff on Twitter about all this stuff you're grilling and smoking on the weekends. And so I think that same approach that you take with brisket, that low and slow approach, that's the same thing. That's the same approach with those middle school kids is, take it low, those low, maintenance type of drills and skills and take it nice and slow with them. And you said if they can come to us with a great stance and know where to line up, shoot, then we can work with that. I think that's a great point.
Stance
Coach.
starts everything we do. Stance starts all. You got a bad stance, you're going to be a bad player. You got to have a great stance.
That's right. All right, Coach Martin, I know that you guys, I'm sure, with your kids, a lot of, you guys play a lot of freshmen. You just talked about your kid, your defensive end / quarterback who's been playing, since he was a freshman. So I'm sure that there's you guys are heavily involved, especially being at a smaller school with your middle school. So what would you say are some skills that you guys want to make sure those middle school kids have when they come up?
One of the things that we're lucky here is we coach our kids. I'm the defensive coordinator for the middle school kids. I'm the defensive coordinator for the JV and the varsity. So we start our kids. We get to coach them from the 5th grade up. And one of the biggest things that we do is I'm kind of like I agree with Coach Clark on this. We start off with a little acronym. It's called SAK, S-A-K, Stance, Alignment, and Keys. That's the first thing that we teach our kids from day one. That how to get in a good stance. We do it every day. From last year when we won the state championship, from the first day we started practice, we did stance, alignment, and key with the varsity. When I was at Arlington Lamar High School on Wednesday before the state championship game, we did the same thing. So we take our kids, stance, alignment, and keys, first thing we do. Second thing is block recognition. We want to teach them down block, zone block, what it is to be able to read the blocks and understand what we're seeing. And the next thing we do is hand placement. We want to know what you're going to do. And like Coach was talking, Coach OGuin was talking, we're going to fight half a man. We're not going to fight a whole man. If we're going to do that, I've worked a lot of camps. The first time you hear the whistle blow is when you start a bull rush. We're not going to bull rush people. We're going to fight half a man, and that's what we're going to do. And so if I had to pick anything, if I was just a high school coach that was getting kids sent to me from the middle school, I'd want them to learn what their stance is, what their assignment is, what their keys are, and block recognition and hand placement. That would be my 3 keys to success for us. And we started in the 5th grade. I get to work with the 5th graders all the way through the seniors.
I want to talk. I want to throw this question to you, Coach OGuin, because and sort of switch it around a little bit. When you're evaluating high school kids now, okay, we got Coach Justin Robinson on here, another college coach I just joined. But when you're looking at high school tape of high school defensive linemen, what are some things that you're looking at as far as when you're evaluating them, and what are some skills that you would love for those guys to come to you already knowing how to do? So what are like the main things that we need to be focusing on as high school defensive line coaches when it comes to those skills?
The first thing we look for on film is, explosiveness that comes with the get off. So, if a guy has a good get off, that's going to catch attention right off the jump. A guy who plays really good with his hands is going to come off right off the jump. And a guy who's good with his eyes, being able to see the block, not just running upfield every play, know when they get in the base block, when they get in the cutoff block, when they get in the reach block, when it's a pass set. So that's something huge we look for. But the number one fundamental we looking on tape is get off and hustling to the ball too. Hustling to the ball. That can't be taught, man. When we see that, it makes us think, do you play football because you want to, or is football recess to you? If you got a kid that's chasing the ball every play, then you can build off that, because you ain't gonna have to beg that kid to practice. You ain't gonna have to beg him to study. You're gonna have to beg him to work hard. So you can see things like that when the kids run into the ball. So I would say get off hands and run into the ball.
I love it. You want those guys jumping off the tape, right? I mean, those kids that just make you all of a sudden hit that pause button on that clicker and run it back, and those kids that just high motor kids are the ones that are going to catch your guy's eye, I'm sure, when you're evaluating all that film.
Yep, because you feel like you might teach them the fundamentals, but if a guy just naturally good off that ball, man, it's hard to teach and improve on, within a short window. So if a guy got that, that's a great building block to have.
No doubt. Coach Noonan.
So Coach Garcia is a young guy, and he submitted 3 questions. He's the only one submitting 3 questions. But I've had the opportunity to talk with him and stuff through a couple of different groups and whatnot. And and Coach Sergio Gonzalez can attest to this too. That this kid is just a magnet for information, and he wants to learn. But I think what we did was we kind of answered, you know, a lot of his questions, because the other questions he had were, you know, the most important fundamental drills and concepts for middle school D-line, and you know, how do we as middle school coaches better prepare our team, our kids. And I think, you know, those kind of tied into a lot of what you guys had already said about development and what we need to improve upon. And it like you said, it starts with the stance, it starts with the get off and doing your job. So I'm going to jump down, Coach Taylor, to this is question 6. And, you know, it's fitting that I get to ask this as this man is now present in the chat. So Coach Robinson, this is your question. This is Justin Robinson's question. His Twitter handle is @coach_JAY53. His question is, what are the disadvantages of running a 3-down and 4-down fronts? Or what are the disadvantages of running a 3-down and 4-down front? Coach Milby, I'm gonna throw this one to you first, as your DC.
Well, you know, we run a 3-4, and of course, throughout my entire career, you know, I've been a part of 4-2-5 and 4-3, you know, schools. You know, whether or not, you know, I was going, you know, coaching the defensive or the offensive side of the ball. And I think, you know, there's always advantages and disadvantages to everything. I like the 3-4 because it allows us to be multiple. It allows us to get to a 4-man look. It allows for us to get to a stack look and stuff like that without really having to change a whole lot. I guess really, you know, one of the disadvantages, you know, depending on how your scheme works is, you know, sometimes, you know, if you just don't have 3 dudes that can take on double teams, you're kind of in a bind sometimes in the box, being able to stop the run and all that kind of stuff, and vice versa. You know, you get into a 4-man look, sometimes you have trouble stopping the you know, if you don't have guys that can sit there and man, you know, play cat D and man guys up, you run into problems where you can't stop the pass. So, you know, sometimes you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but ultimately you got to pick a scheme, and buy into it, get the kids to buy into it, and find out what works best for your school, your group of kids that you have. You know, this year, you know, judging by what I'm going to have at this new school, you know, I've got some pretty big guys that I think are going to be able to help us out running a 3-man and keep guys off of our linebackers and be able to make plays. So, you know, that's one thing that I like about it. And, you know, it also helps with the outside run as well. So that's kind of why I like that 3-down as opposed to a 4-down.
Yeah, you know, we had a defensive meeting today, and that was one of the things that we were talking about is how do we become better at being multiple. And you know, my head coach made a really good point about, do you want to just be average at you know, a few things, or do you want to be great at one thing, you know, with change up? So Coach Bryant, you know, you guys are a 3-down also at McKinney High, but I'm sure you had some experience in a 4-down as well. So what are your takes on this?
It's kind of like what Coach Milby said. I played predominantly in a 4-man when I was at Bergner, Baylor, and with the Falcons. So, you know, I was never a fan of a 3-man just because of D lineman. You hate getting double teamed. So I don't like that. I don't want to get doubles. I want some one-on-one blocks, man-to-man stuff. So I waited until I got to McKinney. This was going on my 3rd year that I started having to learn the 3-man, and I actually love it. Now, I will say you do got to have you somewhat of a dog in the middle that's going to demand that double team. Because if you don't get a demand on the double team, you basically – somebody going to play you, and they're going to shoot them guards straight up to your backer. So it's pointless. But that's what I tell my guys, and I think one of the coaches said here earlier. I think Coach Milby said it, but I tell my guys, if you ain't demanding a double team, there's something wrong with you. You know, they don't think highly of you if you're not demanding a double team. So, again, it's just like what he said too. Like, I was at Plano West, and I played a 4-man, and my tackles wasn't as good in the inside. I got over here, and, we producing some guys, and I got 3 straight D1 DNs. I got one I just sent. He was committed to Baylor, decommitted, and going to Yale. My 2021 guy just committed to Missouri, and I got a 2022 that's going to be a D1 guy as well. So for us this year across the board, I'd be averaging 6'3" across the board. So with that, I think we'll be able to do some things, and they're all athletic, all basketball players. So, things like that. So I think that's the advantage when you got guys like that. But the disadvantage, if you ain't got a guy in the middle that can demand that double team, that's your disadvantage. And then also when you go to that 4-man, what I learned to being in this 3-man is you taking an athlete off the field. And we can put another backer on the field, who's more athletic, a backer or a D lineman. When we can put another backer out there to guard some routes and also that can rush, can blitz and do things like that, that's where you get your advantage when you got your 3-man.
Coach Clark, I'm gonna let you kind of close this one out. You guys are a 4-down right at Aledo.
Yes, sir. When I was a coordinator at Aledo, it was actually an odd front for the coordinator. But getting to Aledo, we don't deviate. We're a 4-man front, and I think these other coaches said it pretty well that personnel is huge. If you got the right personnel, you're gonna be good. I think all fronts are sound, and all fronts have their disadvantages. I would say that for us, the disadvantage would be that, like Coach just said, you lose that extra athlete on the field sometimes. And where we see it is primarily in where we see it in the run fit would be like a fold plays, pullers, lead blockers up inside. Sometimes those backers can get expanded out of the box and your backers have to be just as good of fitters with correct shoulders, inside, outside, spill, squeeze, leverage, and it can stress them a little more. So you got to have, a lot of times you got to have more athletic backers than what you would need in an odd front. And that, I think in the run fit game, it's posed us problems. We have to create backers that are really physical, not afraid to go meet it up in the hole to create those vertical gaps from getting created. And then our backers have to be really good fitters, have a good understanding as to where I fit, on who, or we got to require double teams up front. Just like Coach said, if you're not requiring a double team, you're not playing well. You're not doing well. And we've got to require double teams so much so that they can't come off on our backers, so that they can go fit. Inevitably there's 7-man boxes, for the most part, 4-3, 3-4, 7-man box, I guess, until you get to a 4-2-5, which we do a little bit of that too. And it just comes back down to fitting right. And then it comes back to personnel. Who do you have that can do what, I think. And that would be my answer for us. It can stress our backers a little more, would be the disadvantage of the 4th hand on the ground, would be my answer.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's, at the end of the day, even in a 3-down, when you're bringing that extra person, you're going to end up in a 4-down-ish type look. So ultimately, whether you start in 3-down or you start in 4-down, you're looking to get 4 plus. And like you said, how ultimately it also comes down to knowing your personnel. We can have all the schemes and ideas in the world, but if we can't execute with the guys that we got, then it doesn't matter. So Coach Robinson, I hope that that answers your question. We can circle back around to it at the end if there's some time and we want to discuss this further. But I like those answers, man. And that's the deal, is everything has its good and bads, and we're all creatures of habit, and there's just things that we like better than the other stuff. It doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong, but if you can't coach what you know, then it doesn't do us any good with the guys we have on the field. So, Coach Taylor.
All right, here we go. So this next question is submitted by Coach Taylor, not me though, another Coach Taylor, by Coach Lewis Taylor. His Twitter handle is @CoachTaylor80. And he said, what personnel factors besides this is what we do in depth determine what defensive structure you run each year or game to game if you are multiple? So basically, how do you determine what kind of front or at least what structure that you're going to get into? If we talked about, we got Coach Milby and Coach Bryant, you guys are odd. That can, I'm sure that you can have within that structure, the ability to get in some even, and you're seeing that a lot out of a lot of defenses, except for Aledo, who they just line up in their 4 down front and whip people. But how do you work that in, and how do you determine if you're going to do that on a week-to-week basis? And I'll start with you, Coach Bryant, and just ask you that question.
I was going. We have a great. Our defensive coordinator is good, and our head coach, they worked together previously before we all got to McKinney. So for the most part, we just, without giving that answer, it is kind of just one of those, we do what we do. We got caught up last year. We kind of tried to switch our defense up for the first half of the season, and we was, still winning games, but we was giving up some points. And we went back to what we did and what our defensive coordinator and our head coach built this defense on when they was at Lubbock Estacado. We had a heck of a turnaround that second year. So, I like our defense because we do have the opportunity to reduce down and get in that 4-man as well. So, it's hard not to give that answer, but it is one of those, like, we just stick to what we do and we just go out there. So, our game plan is not more so trying to jump into a multiple. It's more so about how can we attack these guys. We're staying in our defense, but what can we do? We're not changing the defense. We have a defense. This is what we run. We're a 3 down front. What can we do to these guys in there? So it's more so with us is what kind of blitzes or what kind of stunts can we send at these guys to disrupt some things?
Yeah, Coach, I think, you've heard it said before probably that you need to call a defense, not defenses.
Yes.
And you don't need to come – and no one likes the guy who comes into game planning on Sunday and he's drawing up what he saw that Saturday from a college game on TV. And I think we can sometimes get caught up in that and trying to, reinvent ourselves each week. But I think that there is, because this is something we do, and I'm going to throw this over to you, Coach Martin, here in a second. But, you have that foundation, but within that foundation, within that structure, you have the ability to be multiple if the situation requires it, right? Like,
yes.
In East Texas, and Coach Milby can back me up on this, East Texas, you see a gazillion formations and personnel groupings on a given week. Whereas in DFW, you might see all 10 personnel, all 11 personnel, mostly. Here we got all kinds of crazy stuff. So we do have to have the ability to, we may be playing a wing T offense one week and then an air raid offense the next week. So it really is it's kind of crazy. But Coach Martin, I'll throw you that question. How do you guys determine whether or not you're going to be multiple? Do you get out of your base stuff much? How do you guys handle that?
We stay basically when I first come to Mart, and we ran a 4-2-5 first year. Came right out of Huntsville, ran the same thing that I ran as a head coach in Huntsville. We ran a 4-2-5. We jumped up against Canadian the year that they won football and basketball 2 years in a row, and we got beat by them. And when my new head coach took over, we went to the 4-3. And we went to it because of really and truly not personnel, just like it gave us a little more options. But the biggest thing with us, what we determine on what we're doing, when you look at Mart on film, we're going to be in the same thing. We're going to be in a 3-1 shape, basically, which is a 2-eye on the backside. And we're going to stay in that. We adjust our linebackers and our secondary, but our front stays the same. We don't change a whole lot. We don't blitz. I'll be honest, I drink Gatorade and watch the game on the sidelines. I don't even signal defenses. Luckily, I've been blessed the last 3 years, and my son, who eats supper with me every night, was my safety. He made most of our calls. But, we're going to line up and play, and we start our practice every day with what we call a fit drill. And we're going to come out, and it's just a slow-mo drill. We have an offense over there, and they're going to run certain plays, and we're just going to fit into that defense. And, that's why we stay with the 4-man front. My deal is I tried the 3-4 1 year in Huntsville when I was there, and we played enough tight end teams where I ended up in a 4-man front every time anyway. So nothing against the 3-man front. I love it. I've run the stack. I've run, all that stuff. But, my deal is I'm not going to say we're going to do because I've been in that situation as a head coach when you walk into a job and say, well, that's not the way we do it. This is what we do. Well, here's the thing that I believe. I believe every defense has to take on its own personality by the personnel that you put out on the field. I've got 2 great defensive ends. I got one that's going to be a junior next year that's going to be a higher recruit than the one that I have as a senior right now because he's an athlete. So we're going to go into that, instead of doing what we do, we're going to do what our kids allow us to do. And, I'm fortunate that, some of you guys at the bigger schools, you get to see your kids when they high school walk in as a freshman. I get to see mine as 5th and 6th graders. So I know what we're going to get to see. Our fastest kid in the program right now is going to be in the 8th grade next year, and he can outrun everybody on varsity. And so we're fortunate. If Hamlin screws around and lets it win it again this year, I'm going to have to put some rings on my toes because we're going to win it for a couple more. But my deal is, guys, if it was my philosophy, I'm going to do what's best for the kids that I'm going to put on the field to get on the bus for me. That's what I'm going to do.
Coach, I love that answer. I love that answer. And it's one of those things where each year you do kind of have to reevaluate and look at what you got. Coach Bryant and I were kind of talking about this before we started this interview, but next year we're going to have to – our defense is going to look a whole lot different than what we got this year just because we're losing some dudes. And so there's some things that we're able to do this year we're not going to be able to do next year. And that doesn't mean
it's making us LSU fans very happy. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't mean that we're doing a complete wholesale change and overhaul of the defense, but there are some things there that now we have to say, okay, this kid can't do what that kid could do. So now we need to maybe, simplify some things or whatever. Coach OGuin, I'll throw that question over to you and let you weigh in on that.
Yeah, I believe, I like what Coach Martin said, where you have an identity and you play to it. I've been in kind of both situations. Last year when I was at Tech, we came in the spring, we were a 3-4 team. We lost some kids, who didn't make it through school or injuries. So we had to go from repping the whole spring into 3-4. We're going to the summer looking at our team. We didn't have a 3-4, roster. So we had to go to a 3-3 stack. We had to adjust our scheme to the kids we had. So that's one side of it. I was at North Shore, we ran the 4 down. And like Coach Morris said, I used to love the games. Our DC used to just hold up 2 fingers and we just play our base coverage. And it'd be games where we just stay in that the whole time. We don't stunt, we don't move, we just line up and whoop ass. And me personally, as a D-line coach, that was the funnest system I ever played in. Like, you just tell me we can line up. I know I'll get my eyes on my key, and I just line up and get off on the ball and whoop ass every play. We're gonna be fine. And that's what we did. And I think it comes down to a mentality too. The kids buy into it. Sometimes you have to speak belief into the kids. You can be dead ass wrong, but if you say it with enough conviction, the kid's gonna ride with you. So that's the thing I believe too. Get a system, believe in it, and run it. And then there is certain times where you only got so many cards, and you just got to make a scheme fit your kids instead of making a scheme make a kids fit the scheme.
I love that, Coach. Love it. All right, Coach Noonan, what we got?
So this is an interesting question. I'm gonna throw this one to you, Coach Milby, since you technically coach linebackers, but you're the DC. In your scheme, do you allow the D-line to attack the secondary gap once the ball carrier makes his cut, or do you maintain your primary gap to keep a clear picture for the linebackers?
Well, I'm going to tell you this, you get in a lot of 3-4 schemes and stuff like that. You've got D linemen that are 2-gapping and all kinds of stuff. Our guys have 1 gap that they're responsible for. I don't feel like I'm necessarily blessed to have guys that I can sit there and control the entire offensive line with just 3 guys. So I got to make do with what I got. But, we have 1 gap. I teach my guys, obviously they have a read as well. Most of the time we're reading a guard, but we're going to fire off the ball. We're going to attack that tackle, read that guard, see what he does. Hold our gap, and once we see the ball, I tell my guys, go be a football player, go make a play, kind of give them that freedom, to, within their techniques that they're taught to go after it and go get it. And usually, I always tell my linebackers, you got to make that guy in front of you right too. You know, just like sometimes they got to make our guys right. My linebackers got to make our defensive line right too. If they screw up or something like that happens, and that's okay. You know, just as long as we're gap sound and we're taking care of our business, let guys play football.
Coach Clark, I'm gonna slide this over to you because you talked about linebacker fits earlier. You know, and you guys have had a great run of success at Aledo. So how do y'all make that picture, you know, clear for your linebackers, or what are you telling your D line to do once the ball's committed?
We preach hat and hips in my gap. We're going to get hat and hips in my gap. We're going to hit the dude in front of us, and we're going to work our hat and hips to the gap, to the hill line, just like anybody else. And then at that point in time, there could be a little freedom. For our interior guys, I harp on squeezing gaps, not crossing hats, not jumping into another gap. Hey, you want to make a play? I love that. But let's squeeze the linebacker's gap, make the ball bounce to me, and then you make the play in your gap. Let's take the linebacker's gap away. Now, like I make fun of my mics all the time. I'm like, hey, y'all, we don't even need you on zone because the G's about to come all the way down the line and make the play in your gap. But he's going to do it through his gap. He's going to hat and hips in his gap, feel flow, work flat. You're going to be late by the time he gets there if he's good at what he does. And so I wouldn't call it one thing I do not like him doing is crossing hats, especially in a zone scheme, in the stretch scheme. We're not going to cross hats and jump into a linebacker's gap because inevitably we're going to end up with two guys in a gap and one gap with nobody in it. But as far as after I get hips to my gap, find football, work flat to it. Let's go make a play at that point in time. Only time that we'll allow a guy to cross hats is on guard pull away, guard pull, cross ball. Then obviously center's blocking back. We are going to try to cross hats at that point in time. But other than that, we're going to squeeze gaps, especially in a zone or, you know, some sort of dart, pull, fold scheme. We're going to squeeze gaps with our guy, force the ball to bounce to me to make a play. And it's going to be the same for our defensive ends. They're going to be we pride ourselves on gap sound. And in our mentality, the more complicated you make that, the slower you play, and there's more likely a mistake to get created. And we want our kids knowing exactly what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it, so they can play as fast as humanly possible. And if we stay in our gap and everybody stays in their gap, that ball isn't going to go anywhere. We're going to hit it up and we're going to make a play. So I would say no to secondary gaps for the most part.
Gotcha. And I didn't say that this was submitted by Coach Jesse Balderas. His Twitter is at Coach Balderas. Coach Bryant, I'm gonna throw this to you because you got, you know, as a coach now, you know, you have to have it one way, but you also have had your opportunity as a player. So what's been your experience with this?
Again, it's like we kind of like it's kind of what everybody's been saying. My DC and my head coach, they give me the freedom, so they haven't never told me, hey. But for the most part, I'm kind of like what Coach Clark said. Like we squeeze. I'm telling my guys to squeeze. We squeeze in everything. You put that offensive line body in that gap, and it's gonna bounce to you. So my thing is basically stop working so hard to try to make a play, and you can make it so easy. Like you want to sit here and my biggest thing, I tell my guys, we don't play peekaboo. Ain't no peekaboo because we want to jump inside, jump back out. And I say, at the end of the day, we call ourselves big athletes, but let's be real. That guy back there holding the ball is more of an athlete than you. And 9 times out of 10, what we get nowadays, a running back is supposed to hit this gap, but 9 times out of 10, he's not going to hit that gap. He going to get back there, he going to bounce, he going to find the crease. And, you know, running backs nowadays, we got some good ones around here. So my thing is, I do tell them, put that body in the gap and let that guy bounce to you, and you're going to make an easy play and going to be able to get back up, and you don't got to – you're not tired. You don't have to do a lot of running to the ball. But I do tell my guys also, now, if we get there, because we might be undersized sometimes, let's make sure we hold our gap. And once the ball declares, now we can cross face. When I say declare, that means we late. That means you ain't getting a tackle for loss. That means you probably going to make a tackle on the game. So that means if I'm sitting right here, let's just say my 5 technique, and he's sitting right here with this tackle, and that running back's about to hit that B gap, you sit there. And I mean, once you know he can't jump cut or anything, and he's hitting that B gap, now you can cross face and go make a play. And now we probably made a tackle for a 2-yard gain. But I'd rather us get that for a 2-yard gain and you're going to make a play than make that guy bounce outside, and now he's probably taking it to the house on us. But if I had to answer it, I'm going to tell my guy, put that offensive line body in the gap, and then you just make the play like that.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think we can all agree that doing your job first really helps everybody behind you. And if you do your job to the extent that we're all asking, you end up doing somebody else's job. Because just like Coach Clark said, just like what you said, you're not going to be as tired trying to swap and play peekaboo. You squeeze it down, that ball bounces. Most of the time, that defensive line's making the tackles on a cutback because we've squeezed it down. We've reduced 1-2 gaps. So I'm with you on that, absolutely. So, Coach Taylor?
Yeah, Coach. How are we doing on time? What do you think? Do we need to skip to the our last few questions here, or you want to open it up, or what? I'll tell you what, I got one more question that left for mine, and it's a really specific question.
Yeah,
and,
I think we should ask that one.
Okay. All right.
I think Coach, I think the last two are really good.
Okay.
And we can just, after the last one, if we want to open it up, and guys want to hang out for a little bit, we can do that.
All right, perfect. Okay, this question was submitted by Coach Brian Dreyer. Twitter handle is @FBCoachDreyer. And so this is talking about, in a 4-2-5 defense, which I don't know if we have any guys who are currently running a 4-2-5. Well, Coach Mart, y'all are, right? You said you're 4-2-5 now?
No, I ran it when I first got here.
I'm sorry. So now you're 4-3. You're 4-3. Well, this is – I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. I'm going to ask you, Coach Clark, and you about this question, because you guys are even fronts. It says with your, and I'll just read this question as it's written. Reduced strong defensive end alignment, 6-eye technique, reading tackle or tight end. So I'm assuming he's talking about, if you're playing, you're playing a 6, like a head up on the tight end. Are you reading the tackle? Are you reading the tight end? I guess he could be talking about, a 7 if you're playing a 6-eye or a 7, whatever. But let's just say when you're playing, if you have your defensive end and he's lined up on that tight end, he's punching the tight end. Is he looking at the tight end or is he looking at the tackle, Coach Martin?
Okay, well, what I do, and this is just me, what I do is we're going to line up in a 6. If we're head up, we're going to allow our hands to be our eyes. We're going to read that block with our hands, and we're going to play the block of the tight end. If we're playing here, down here in the Waco area, I'm playing Crawford, who's going to give me a veer release. I'm going to run it till I don't feel pressure, and then I'm going to ricochet back inside. Okay? If I line up inside, if I'm on an inside shade of that tight end, anytime what our key term is with our guys, if I'm lined up inside, I'm reading inside. So if I'm lined up inside on that tight end in a 7, then I'm going to read that tackle. I'm going to throw my hands to that tight end, but I'm going to read inside. And that's the way ours kind of changes a little bit, and we see tight ends every once in a while where we're going to have to read things like that. But still, the way that I coach my kids is we're reading every block with our hands. We're going to see the block, feel the block, and then we're going to react to what we see. And just like the question before, our belief here in Mart is we play gap integrity. What gap you're lined up in, you're going to play. We had an incident, if y'all saw the state championship game playing Hamlin this year. I'm a big, and like Coach Clark was talking about crossing face, we cross face on some of the block back on our shades, our inside shades. So if that center blocks back on us, we cross face. Well, Hamlin taught us a lesson on the first touchdown that they scored. As soon as we cross face, that center spun his butt and sealed us inside and kicked my guy out on the weak side, and the guy went 40 yards on the zone play. So we want to make sure that anything that we're lined up in, our shades dictate where we read. If I'm head up, I'm going to play the guy. Not necessarily as a 2 gap, but I'm going to read his block and play. If I'm lined up inside, I'm going to read the guy inside to me. And I hope that's not a jicked up answer right there, if you kind of understand what I'm saying.
No, I had Coach Noonan and I have a coach that we both have learned a lot from, and that's Coach Robert Irwin, who's at Midlothian High School, and he talks about it's almost like a Braille technique, whereas if you're reading Braille, you're going to use your hands to kind of run across those dots to tell read what something is, and that's what your guys are doing when they're playing that technique. Their hands are on that tight end, but they're looking at the tackle and they're using their hands on that tight end to diagnose what kind of block it is and what the play is. And so,
exactly, and when we were in the bigger classification, and we were playing Crawford every year, because if none of y'all know about Crawford, they're a very established program here in Central Texas, and they always run a tight end. And our guys, really and truly, that was something that we had to we worked from day one, because we knew we were going to play Crawford in the playoffs. That we're going to read with our hands, because we're going to get that veer release to get us wide, because we play our defensive ends with good athletes. They're going to get us wide and try to come back inside of us. And, like Coach said too, we're going to make our linebackers right. That's our D-line job. Our D-line job is to make that linebacker right. I'm going to give you glory. The paper's not going to, but we're going to make that linebacker right.
Yeah. Coach Clark, how are you guys coaching that with your six technique?
It's actually a two-part answer. I'll make the first one really quick. It's very similar to what Coach Martin's doing. To us, if we get into a six technique, it'll be in two situations. If we get into our 4-2-5 package and we get a tight end, we will be in a six technique, kind of. And then if we see any type of too tight set, our backside end will be in a six technique as well. And we're going to do the same thing. In my mentality, if you're going to put a tight end in there, most high school tight ends can't block most high school defensive ends, because if they can, they're probably playing defensive end. So I think if we'll get off into that dude with our hands and with our face and with our eyes, we're going to create some problems right off the bat. And we're going to feel the tackle, kind of like Coach said. We're going to get into the tight end. We're going to have our hat and hips inside of that gap, and we're going to feel the tackle. If he doesn't show up, something's wrong. And we need to ricochet back inside, get our eyes back down the side, so on and so forth. The second part to that answer, what we have kind of started to move to is what we call a different technique called an ear technique. And I think we talked about on the podcast maybe a little bit, where we will play an outside alignment and read the block in front of us. If we get a base, we're going to get into C gap right now. We're going to rip inside C gap. If we get a down block, we're going to run heel line. And so what that's allowed us to do is it's allowed us to play a C gap. Our defensive end is C gap responsible if the tight end comes at him. If the tight end goes down or away, he runs heel line to C gap. So inevitably, we're taking care of the C gap with our defensive end while not giving up the edge for a wrong shoulder into counter, or for reading, taking dive on zone or something like that. And it's where we moved to, and it's really, really helped our six, because we would get six technique on the backside of ace. And if we had a defensive end that couldn't handle it, man, they would start running buck sweep weak, and they would double his butt out of there, and it would give us a lot of stinking problems. And so that's where we kind of generated, and I don't know if we generated or heard it, created it, what we did to come up with that technique on the backside, but it really slowed it all down. And also, anytime a block down scheme, you want to have that wrong shoulder guy. And what it did was it allowed us to have it, no matter if we were C gap responsible or not, it still allowed us to have that. And I've heard the technique called multiple things. We call it an ear technique. I've heard it called a frontal, clown technique too, I think. I don't know. But so we've kind of drifted away from a true six. But if we are going to play a true six, we're going to play it a lot like Coach Martin said.
Okay.
Can I add something to that? Just
of course, Coach.
What Coach Clark, I think him and I are on the same page. we have a call we make for ours, and like where coach is talking about an ace set or something of that sort. If we ended up with a nub tight end where it's just a tight end, no split receivers, what we call a nub, then we get a shooter call from our corner. And when we get a shooter call from our corner, it puts us in a 6 because we're not real smart down here in Central Texas sometimes. So we want to use the shooter as the same letter starts with the 6. So we're going to line up in a 6, and we're going to read the same way. And it does something for us as well. If he's got a pro twin set or something like that, he's not going to get a shooter call because he's got a corner outside of him, and he's going to play an outside shade. So that's why we don't get in a 6 a whole lot, but when we do, it's because we got a counter outside, a corner outside of us.
Coach, I'm going to break protocol a little bit here real quick, Coach Noonan. And I just saw a question pop up in the chat for Coach Clark. He said, how do you play your Sam or Rover to that ear technique?
Well, first off, he's the one that's going to make that call for him. And so with that clears up communication immediately. We both know what's going to go on. So on a down block, he would play it like he's a 9 technique. So if we have the ear technique and the tight end, or we even do an ear technique as a 5 as well in a tackle if we want, which really frees up the outside linebacker for some RPO stuff. But for the question here, as a 9 technique, he knows right now, hey, if he goes down, I'm checking quarterback, cutback, reverse. Just any other – it goes back to your outside linebacker rules at that point in time if the tight end goes down. And then it makes it really easy for him if he bases, because – we tell him depth is his friend. Now, as long as he maintains a little bit of depth, as soon as that end jumps inside and he sees it, that ball's got to bounce to him. So he's already lined up in his gap because it's going to bounce outside to him, because he was a C-gap responsible individual or a D-gap responsible individual if he's got a 6 technique, technically. And so it really doesn't change a whole lot. And it allows him to help his alignment as well, knowing I won't have to go inside to that C gap, or if it's a 5 technique, I won't ever have to go into that B gap, because I know if flow comes at me, tackle or tight end comes at me, that ends inside right now, and I'm playing whatever bounces outside to him would be my answer. It simplifies it for him, to me, to be honest. Yeah. I think.
Great stuff, Coach. Coach Noonan?
Man, I liked it all. So I'm gonna kind of tweak this last question as our last official question, and then what we'll do is just kind of open it up. Anybody that wants to for the next about 10, 15 minutes. We're getting closer to the 2-hour mark, but we'll close out with this last official question, and then we'll kind of we'll go from there. So, Coach Milby, I'm going to start with you. I know we all love the idea of just playing base and living life in base and not having to do too much. But do you have one stunt or game that you like to use, whether it's strictly for the pass, strictly for the run, or a combination of both? You got to unmute.
Sorry, to be honest with you, as far as just straight D-line stunts, as far as loop stunts and stuff like that, we don't really incorporate that a whole lot. I kind of surprise a lot of people whenever I talk to them about obviously we played in the state championship last year, but I tell people we really didn't blitz a lot. We might have been a 20-30%. Blitz stunt team because we would play in the base. Now as far as D-line stunts, we're not going to just sit in base. I like to play games and slant guys, switching gaps and stuff like that, just to make an offensive line's job a little bit more difficult. But if I see that early that they're having trouble with that, we go to it a lot more than if they can handle it. But as far as actual stunts, we've got blitzes within our defense that we kind of run here and there, and specific blitzes and stuff to sprint out past teams and run blitzes and pass blitzes. And, you know, to say that I have one or anything like that, you know, not to divulge too much information, but, you know, I don't really have a real specific one, because the way I play my inside backers, I don't blitz them a lot. If I blitz anybody, I'm usually, you know, just sending both backers on a storm blitz. You know, send those guys off the edge and see gap. But like I said, I like to tell my guys we're an aggressive defense in the way we play, not necessarily how I call it.
Gotcha. I like that. I like that. Coach OGuin, you know, what have you? Is there anything from your career that you feel has been your favorite, or is there something going on right now at Notre Dame that, without giving too much away, that you really like from a stunt or a game standpoint?
One of my personal favorite games in my 4-down is what we used to call gate or fence. It's like when you get two eyes in gate or a 2 eye and a 3 in fence. It's a read game on the center. We found it to be very effective versus inside zone teams. And against the slide, we ran it a whole lot when I was coaching at Angleton. I think that's when we ran it the most. I incorporated it a little bit when I was at North Shore. But we're reading the center out of those 2 eyes. If the center faces me, then I'm wrapping. If that center's away from me, I'm flat off his ass. And especially against the heavy inside zone teams, man, that really kills the inside zone. The penetrator cuts it off, and the looper, he's there to make the play. And also against those teams that are heavy half slide teams, where they send that center full away, man, that guy's scraping off his ass and getting penetration, making the quarterback move, and then the guy to the slide side is wrapping to the man side, and we've had a lot of sacks. That's been a very productive slide, stunt for us. Getting sacked, getting that guy, put my athlete, normally to the side that the slide is coming to, so he can wrap and clean up the quarterback. But that's probably my favorite run stunt and pass stunt, my favorite inside.
I like that.
Coach OGuin, can I ask you a question on that real quick?
Yes, sir.
So when you're reading that center, and that center is, let's say he's to me, okay? And I'm the 2 eye. Am I engaging him? And then is the wrapper, is he going to knock me off? Like, is he going to collision that center, or is he just going all the way around? How are you doing that?
Now, he's going, he's trying to pin that hip coming flat off his ass as he's penetrating the backside. And yes, the wrapper will collision because, you're reading that center, so he could get on you fast, or you could, take an aggressive first step. You could once you collision him, then you come across. So it doesn't have to always be a collision, but sometimes it can happen.
Yeah, I got you.
I don't specifically coach, hey, you got a collision the center on the wrap.
Yeah. I think Coach Clark had a question to ask.
Yeah, go ahead, Coach Clark.
Yeah, we started installing this summer, and I'm teaching it a little bit different. I was going to ask you about it. Primarily for the man slide stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Center slides away.
Okay.
I'm going to put directional so we know who's talking about. Center slides left.
Okay.
So my right D tackle is going to come off his butt. That's the way you coach it.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
What's the aiming point after he comes off his butt? Here's why, because in a lot of our twist game stuff, we don't get back over to that where the wrapper comes from. Sometimes can create a lane that we can't always get all the way over to. That allows the quarterback to step up into. So how I started coaching it is, if center goes away, you got to get into him to the lane before you can start to create.
Okay. So by creating, you mean get upfield?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And did you ever run into the problem without having, because honestly, getting these kids to understand, go get into that center, it's not clicking in their head like I want it to. And it might be better if I just wipe their butt there. But do you ever have problems with that opposite side lane getting created to where the quarterback can escape the whole stunt?
Yeah, we have come into that problem. If that becomes an issue where we can't cover that gap because it can get wide on you,
yes.
we have the defensive end to that side, and I tell them, hey, you got a long arm collapse pocket. You can't convert up the field. You can't speed.
Gotcha.
You're on long arm. You're going to collapse that pocket. So if the quarterback does step up, you can fold in and make the play. So that's one thing that I do to help. And I just try to tell like you said, the penetrator to try to collision that center before he starts to work up, so he can buy some time for that rapper to get around.
Gotcha.
He's also knocking
Hey,
that.
one more question for you, if I can. You mind, Coach?
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
Okay. Another problem is since they're reading it, what I have a problem is they'll get right there next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
What's the technique on, hey, center goes away, what do I do? Because I got to take an aggressive step, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So I got to take an aggressive step right down there at him. Okay, center goes away. Do you tell him to throw the brakes on? Do you tell him to take a stutter step? Is there a step or maybe even a saying that gets him into that wrap a little quicker? Does that make sense?
Because that is the one thing that throws it off. And once teams start playing you a lot, they'll start straight releasing that center so you can't get a read on them.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is penetrate that double A gap. If one of the guys can feel a guard come down on them, then most likely that's a slide side. So you want to try to come out. That guy wants to try to come out. But yeah,
Gotcha.
that will give you problems when they straight release the center. So I try to tell, hey, it turns into double A gap penetration. If you feel pressure on your outside shoulder, then you can start working out of it.
Gotcha.
And the other guy stays in. You don't feel pressure, you stay in.
Gotcha. Appreciate it, Coach.
Yes,
I like
and
that.
if you like that, I know A&M has ran a lot of it this past year. When I was at Angleton, we got it from TCU. TCU runs a lot of it, and Wake Forest runs some of it. So if you're looking for some tape on some college teams that run that stunt, those are three I know specifically that I've looked at this offseason.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
And I know that, and Coach Clark, I think you and I talked about this on our podcast episode, but and I'll just say this for everybody else's benefit, but Coach Cade Faskey, who's the defensive ends coach at Stephen F. Austin, he has a whole presentation on this that he would probably willing to at least talk with you about, and so he's a good one to look up. So if you can find him on Twitter. I think it's at Coach Faskey, but or Foskey. Sorry, I'm saying his name wrong. But also I have his contact information for guys who might want to learn more about that. But that's something we've implemented as well. I mean, just kidding. No, we haven't, Brent. No, we haven't.
Don't coach O-line anymore.
Brent and I play each other. So anyway. All right, Coach Noonan, throwing it back over to you.
I'm gonna let Coach Bryant. When you have a guy like Coach Corey Jordan coaching the back end, right? He's gonna put them dudes on lockdown. It creates a lot of games and opportunities. And so what are some things that you like to take advantage of? Because I know y'all have some aggressiveness built into your defense. Besides the way that you play, and I like the way that you explain that, Brent. We're aggressive in the way we play, not necessarily in the way we call it, but still being aggressive with some calls. Especially if you've got guys that can help cover the back end and buy you some time.
Oh yeah, Kojo is the best in it in that secondary. So. But we got guys like that. We got some stuff we call like our supers. So that means they manned up back there and we bringing the heat. But if we just running some of our little 5-man pressures, one of my favorite stunts that our DC calls is a stab and a bomb, where we're switching that responsibility with our outside backer and that DN. So if my DN's in a 4 and he got that outside backer, they'll give a me you call. And he's basically slanting outside, and that outside backer is coming in through that B gap. So like running the scissors on that offensive tackle. So I like that, and I also like what Coach Gwynn was talking about as well. We kind of do something like that even out of our 3-man. Our defensive coordinator, man, we got creative at the end of the season, and he put it in. And we actually had probably more sacks in the last 2 games than our last 2 playoff games than we had all year. We started running the ears in a knot with just 3-man. And it was always to the 5-man side. So I'm kind of the same way. I tell the guys, you got to sell it on both sides. So what you got to do is, if I'm running the ears and we know that's the end first, it ain't no just go now. I'm telling him to go 1, 2, and then he's going up under, because at the same time I got that nose guard. He's drawing that double team. So I tell him, you can back off the ball a little bit, but you have to get off the ball like you really coming, so that guy don't think nothing. Because the biggest thing is when you running those stunts with those D linemen, they have to get off the ball like they would any other play. Because if they don't, they get to tiptoeing and looking. Offensive lineman, all he's thinking is something up, and he going to look, and he going to run right into your guy that's penetrating. So I tell those guys, back up a little bit, penetrate that guy fast as you can, but don't let that guy get a hold of you. So I tell them to come in there with just crazy hands. Come in there with crazy hands, don't let them get a hold of you. And once you see that guy cross your face, now you loop around. And we did something similar to like Coach said in my previous school, we was a 4-man. We had a twist inside, and we just called it like a read twist. We would go read, twist, and it was get off the ball. We was in 2-2s, and whichever way that center turned, now whoever he turned to, we got our penetrators off his butt, then you got the looper. So it wasn't just you going first, you going second. We just kind of read it.
I like that. I like that. Coach Robinson, I saw your question pop in, and then I think he started to talk about it. Is there more that you're wanting to hear? And at this point, we can be a little bit more lax, and if you guys want to unmute yourselves, just be mindful of everybody else's and not talking over each other. But Coach Robinson asked, how do you teach your stick one gap movements? What are your aiming points when moving? So I'll let you kind of take that one, Coach Bryant, because that came in as you were talking. So I don't know if it was directly related to you or just in general.
So just if I'm running with my 5 technique coming inside, we're basically, if that's what he's asking, if he's talking about the stick, one gap.
Yeah, I think that's what he's asking.
Basically, we still just teaching our guys shoulder to shoulder, but it still go back to that see it, feel it. I'm coming in. If I'm a 5 and we're sticking, we got some stunts where we long stick all the way to the A gap, but we might just be running a little slant to the B gap. We're shoulder to shoulder. Everything I tell my guys. So if I'm 5, I'm going basically to a 4 eye, and I got my eyes inside. So looking for anything. So I'm basically feeling the tackle, but I'm seeing what's down the line of scrimmage. I'm looking at that guard, through that guard on down the line of scrimmage. Like I say, most of the time is we come across a lot of teams that it just so happens, if I'm slanting inside, that guard's going up to the backer, that tackle's leaving me alone, and you stuck there. And they go back to what we was talking about earlier when we was talking about spilling it. And so now you have to get there, get my eyes aside, and you got to keep running down that line and long arm. So my thing, going back to this question, basically what I'm doing, I'm coming shoulder to shoulder. I'm still feeling that tackle, but I'm reading and looking at that guard, if that answers his question.
I got it. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate everybody for taking the time. The panelists, I know Coach OG had to bounce out. But just in closing remarks, man, I told the guys in our kind of pre-meeting, this is just a personal quest of knowledge for me, and that's kind of why I started this disruption chat. And like Coach Bryant said, if I had the keys to success, why wouldn't I make copies for everybody? So none of the knowledge that I'm consuming is mine. It's everybody else's that they're willing to share. So I'm just trying to provide a vehicle or a platform for other people to learn from. So I really appreciate all you guys for supporting the chat, for being willing to talk ball. I know we all are competitors and we all want to win, but ultimately I think we can all walk away from here tonight having at least 1 or 2 nuggets that we can take into this coming season. Because I believe we're going to have one. I'm gonna hold the faith that we're going to have one. Coach Taylor.
Yeah, just to echo what Coach Noonan said, I really enjoyed it. And when we first kind of started kicking this idea around, I was just really, really excited about it. And kind of the same thing, the reason why he started his Twitter chat is the same reason why I started a podcast, just because I felt like, I love listening to podcasts and talking ball. But, for every podcast you can find out there about, freaking running mesh routes and air raid stuff, you can't find anything on defense and more importantly on defensive line play. So I just, and I guess tried to find a way to maybe fill that void. And there's a lot of great resources out there for defensive line coaches. Coach Noonan's chat is one of them. Craig Rowe on Twitter has a lot of great stuff, D-line vids. And so I'm just glad to play a small role in that. And And I just really appreciate Coach Clark, especially, and Coach Martin and Coach OGuin for, they've helped me out twice now being on this chat, and then also coming on the podcast and sharing some of their knowledge there. And then obviously I've known Coach Milby for a long time and appreciate him. And then Coach, of course, Coach Bryant, who I think we're going to have to get on the podcast, Coach Bryant. Well, I'll hit you up, and we'll have to get you on there. And anyway, just appreciate you guys being a part of it, because it wouldn't have been any fun without you guys coming in and asking questions and being a part of it. Big shout out. I want to give a couple shout outs real quick. First of all, my man Coach Tino Acosta from Iowa Park. Every week he emails me and tells me something he likes about the podcast, and so I appreciate it. I appreciate Coach Acosta and his encouragement. And then my man Coach Randall. Everybody knows him as Coach Randall. I know him as Coach Big Weight. He was a graduate assistant at Harding University, where I went to school, and he's also a guy who was on the podcast, and he's on here tonight. So I want to give him a shout out as well. So thank you, all you guys, for coming on.
Awesome. Well, guys, officially we're done with the chat. If you guys want to hang out for a few minutes and just talk more ball, we're welcome to. I'm gonna turn the actual recording off at this point.